do you want
really
the ice cream in the freezer?
That's actually not ice cream. Those are worms.
Oh,
yeah.
My name's Cassidy.
And I'm Cody.
And this is the YEGans podcast. Each episode, we try to learn something new from experts who just so happen to be our friends.
In this episode, we become permacultured with our friends Kaz and Marcin as they teach us the ins and outs of vermicomposting.
Yeah, boy. Hello, YEGans listeners. Welcome back for another week. Thank you for tuning in again after the really long-ass first episode.
Well, week's like a relative term of time, right? 7 days? That's how long it took to create all of life according to the Bible. So, I don't know. I think we're pretty on it with 1 week.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going to try our best to stay on topic and make this snappy because we got a lot of feedback. So thank you if you listened to our last podcast and gave us some suggestions. Those are very valued, and please continue to do so, either in the comments below, or if you know us personally, you can give us your thoughts right to our face.
Yeah, speaking of feedback, my sister gave me some feedback that really surprised me. She came to me and she said, I'm really happy that you're making your podcast because I'm starting to see all my friends around me are as experts. I'm so happy that you have all those friends that you can learn lessons from. And I said to her, I'm really glad that it's like you can view life that way. Because that's the whole purpose of this project. If anyone starts like an inquiry like this, someone starts their own, I don't know, don't make a show of it. That's a huge mistake. Like we're down the rabbit hole. But if you just conduct this by yourself and keep your findings to yourself, you'll be so surprised that if you're interested in what interests your friends, how much wisdom and joy you can receive from them, and how much closer you become as people.
One of the other feedback bits that we got was to record video or to provide some sort of visuals. And for our YouTube channel, that's feasible. We're hopefully going to be doing something like that. But we're also going to be posting our podcast on strictly audio platforms. So if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is all we have at the time of this recording, then you can probably look forward to some visuals in the future. But we're going to try to describe things as much as possible so that we don't have to rely on visuals for you to get the full immersive experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No one who needs eyes when you can just listen to all the things.
Exactly.
I'll give you a challenge, listeners. We don't know how to stimulate the eyes. We don't know how to film or how to take good pictures. If someone could teach us and reach out to us, maybe we would do that if we learned.
Yeah. Be a future guest on our prestigious, wide-reaching podcast with all of we've got 20 subscribers. I mean, I'm pretty happy with that number considering that this is brand new. And did you know that once we reach, I think it's 100, we can change the URL to our channel to whatever we want. So that is my next major goal in life.
My goal is to become a better citizen in person from conducting this podcast.
Right. And I'm all about the numbers.
Yeah, I guess we have different goals. But you know what? They're going to both happen at the same time. Sooner or later, you're going to be you're going to be a completely confident, excellent citizen in person. And I'm going to be making that YouTube dough.
That YouTube dough. I feel like people... even people who make money on YouTube nowadays aren't really making money on YouTube very much. You have to either have a Patreon or you have to do, sponsorships. Oh, that's another thing, actually, I found out. The Alberta Podcast Network. If you have a podcast and you want to be a part of the network, you basically get paid for it. They pay you, $25 an episode, and then you do sponsor, you have to talk about the sponsors.
Wow.
But that's a thing that we could...
Is this us being recorded... and selling out? Cassidy, what is vermicomposting? I think Socrates asked that.
I think he did. I read that somewhere. And you're going to find out. We had a couple of really great friends. Kaz and Marcin are two fellows that I met through... how did I meet? Well, I met Kaz initially because when I started the VVUA... the Vegans and Vegetarians of the U of A.
I love Athabasca.
Yeah. Kaz was working for student group services at the university, and he was also vegan, so he was like kind of our inside man. He helped like push our application through. I don't think he did anything extra. Well, maybe he did, but I just know that it made the process seamless and delightful. And Marcin, I met through actually my roommate, Alex. She knew him, and so this was like, I don't know, like, I want to say a year and a half? No, 2 years, 2.5. It was a while ago. So Marcin and Kaz, who work for, well, they started Spruce Permaculture, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that as well. And yeah.
So I knew of the existence of Marcin because I saw him at some of your parties. I've never met Kaz, and I didn't read the text saying that there was going to be more than one person until it was too late. And I'm like, oh crap, I'm going to be interviewing 2 people? That's too much. Introduce different spellings of 2 wherever you want in that joke. It's a bad joke though. So I met Kaz there, and he literally usurped my role as podcast interviewer. He just did it better than I did. Mm-hmm. Like, you're gonna see him. He flexes on me the way worms flex on random
rotting,
organic, evil material.
Yeah, Kaz was definitely
Much
doing
better
a good
than me.
job at describing things. I feel he was a real asset to this episode. So thank you, Kaz.
Kaz is good at both compost-related and non-compost related things. Therefore, that's everything.
Yeah.
That's
Logic
everything.
follows.
What did you learn, or what did you see when you were first going into that? Like, why vermicomposting? Like, did they offer you any other ideas, or like, did you choose this in particular? How did this event come to be?
Okay, so I chose vermicomposting, I believe. I think I just knew that Marcin had done a workshop on it at last year's Resilience Festival, and so I reached out to him about it, and he was like, yeah, I still have some supplies left over from that, so let's do it. And then actually, come to think of it, I was supposed to pay him $20, and I still haven't. Marcin, if you're listening to this, please remind me to pay you for those supplies. Because I'm pretty sure in between that, you literally also, like, bought me a drink at the Buckingham one time. And so now I owe you, like, at least $25.
Dude, that's like one Alberta podcast sponsorship worth of money.
Yeah.
We're all just humans.
Yeah. Did you know, you said you didn't know what vermicomposting was?
No, not at all. I heard it mentioned because I follow a lot of permaculture, like, blogs, I guess. It's like I follow them like on Facebook, and I saw a documentary called Sustainable Me when I went to a filming of, I can't remember what the event was, but it was hosted by YEGans, and it showed all the different initiatives in Edmonton that are concerned with the new idea of permaculture, which is like, as we're going to see soon, and you're going to hear a much better definition, it's the idea that waste and work are kind of human concepts. That in nature, everything's very efficient. Everything flows into itself. Mm-hmm. There's no byproduct that's absolutely useless because all things turn into each other and they contribute to one sustainable environment. I learned that from I got an essence of that when I saw a documentary. The people who spoke within it, they're very passionate about what they're saying, and it's so crazy. I met 2 people who just so happened to be my friends who have the same mindset. Mm-hmm. It's like a very small world and a very big world simultaneously.
Yeah, interviewing them was really, really great. I learned a lot, and I really could see their
expertise
and their passion, and that was just really inspiring. So
that's a good point. Like, do you view them entirely different? Because you've seen them. Because people wear many hats, and you've seen them only wearing one, that of friend and inside man. How is it to see them both as experts? And also, like, I think they're both graduates now from the U of A.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
So yeah, now they're like not even students anymore. They're like in the world, so to speak.
Yeah, I guess it sort of helps me to visualize that path from like learning to teaching to incorporating what you've learned into sort of society and your community, and that's what I want to do. So yeah, I don't see them as different people though. I still see them as those 2 dudes that I know. But just, you know.
Are you saying that if someone knows something and really cares about it, it might change their entire life? What? I agree. That was well done. You're like, yeah, they low-key became philosophers. I was say philosophers, and I'm like, oh god.
Oh shit. Exam anxiety intensifies. But yeah, I think why don't we just launch right into it? I think we've said enough.
Yes, let's dig into it the way a worm would dig into a bottle of Coca-Cola, and the Coca-Cola would eat that worm alive.
And the cycle is beautiful and
Delicious.
So, step 1, don't freeze the worms. Good to know.
Yeah, which is tough on a day like this. It's very frosty out there.
So is that why vermicomposting is so great for indoors? Because it's usually warm. Is that an accurate statement? Okay, perfect.
You gotta be warm.
Awesome.
Can I ask you a question? What is vermicomposting? I have no idea.
Vermicomposting.
Vermicomposting?
Verma?
Oh, I keep saying
I don't know.
vermi.
How do you pronounce it?
I don't know. But I say vermicomposting.
Yeah, same.
Vermicomposting.
Nice.
Yeah.
If
So
you
what
were
is
to
it?
summarize it, what would you say that this is?
I'd say worms plus composting.
Nice.
Composting with worms.
Yeah, that's about what I thought.
Yep. So we've got 2 Rubbermaid bins. One of them is larger than the other. One's going to sit inside the other, and we drill some holes in the top and the bottom for air and moisture to get through. So the bottom one's going to catch the moisture from the one that has our compost in it.
Oh.
You don't want the worms drowning in too much water, so
Okay.
that's why we've got 2, and the bottom one is just smaller because we don't need a full size bin. We've got some landscaping fabric and duct tape, which we'll use to create a barrier in the top so you don't have worms crawling out of your bin. And we've got a drill to drill these aforementioned holes.
This is so cool.
Okay.
So also some newspaper, which we'll cut into, or rip into shreds, and we've got our worms.
Very cool.
An integral component.
I have a question.
Awesome.
Where did you get your worms?
Well, I built my first bin 3 or 4 years ago, and they've just grown and grown. So it's
So they
kind
just
of,
multiply.
Yep, it's a community thing. You know, one person, and then they spread it, and then you have hundreds of populations.
Like a
Jesus.
sustainability virus.
I
Awesome.
dig it.
So this bottom bin, then, we would empty occasionally?
Yep.
Or, yeah?
Yeah, so you can use that as compost in your plants right away. And it's best to empty it rather frequently, because if you don't, it will sit there and become anaerobic and start to smell. So either shake it around and introduce some oxygen, or clear it out regularly.
Okay. Well, let's get started.
Okay.
Whoa.
I do have one question. So how did you 2 get started with this, and why are you drawn to it?
Well, Marcin mentioned that he got his first bin like 3 years ago or so.
Yeah.
3. And I probably started mine maybe even 8 years ago, like quite a while ago. And I've still got that original worm population. And I started from quite a small population, so they might be a little bit inbred. So I've mixed them with some
Oh
of
my.
Marcin's worms, some other ones.
So they reproduce sexually?
Yes.
They are hermaphroditic, actually.
Oh.
And when I was pulling the worms out for this bin, I actually found a pair that were copulating. They might still be going at it in there.
Oh, dear.
But
Scandalous.
they will fuse like their nodes together and stay attached like that for a little while. It's quite an unusual sight.
Ooh.
Swap things, and then
Yeah. And then they
release
can
these.
hold on to it for a while, and then they make these little egg pods, which will be chock full of baby worms. So they multiply quite quickly. I don't remember the stat, but it's like a population will double every 2 months or something.
Yeah, it
Holy
takes
cow.
6 weeks for that little sack of baby worms to mature into worms that are of reproductive age.
And so if you don't have friends to give them to, what do you do if you have too many worms?
Well, they kind of self-limit. If you don't give
Yeah.
them a whole ton of food, they'll just grow to the population's capacity.
Oh, okay. Nice. Okay. Let's get
Yeah, get to
started.
it. I'm satisfied. I'm just thinking about worms and Valentine's Day now. I'm like, it's very romantic. I'm glad we put this episode around this date.
Yeah, we timed it really well. Although when it comes out, it's going to be like
It'll be a little
April.
Yeah.
But that's
I think
okay.
worm love lasts forever.
So we're drilling holes into the top bin, correct?
We'll put it into the lid, so we'll do large holes in the lid, basically as large as we can get them, and that will cover with landscaping fabric. And then into the inner bin, the taller bin, we'll put very tiny perforations, like the smallest ones we can get.
Okay.
And the idea with that is just so that we're not losing too many worms through the bottom holes. So it's just liquid that's draining through. We're not losing them
Cool.
into the abyss.
The abyss just being the ground outside the Outside the tote.
being like the outer tote where we collect the water. So if they get into there, they run out of food. They probably drown. Yeah.
It is
Oh my.
That's
essentially-
deep.
Yeah.
It is the abyss.
Yeah.
For worms, that's like worm hell.
No.
I like the metaphor.
We try to keep them in worm heaven.
Yeah.
So basically, you could just pop it through with tons of holes. In this area, we want a little bit of space around the edge to put our duct tape. So
Okay.
don't drill any holes within maybe 1.5 inches of that edge.
Okay.
But yeah, you can just fill it up.
All right. Drilling holes into the lid. Whoa,
Yep.
that wasn't so bad. Is that enough holes?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
plenty. I put like 6 holes into mine.
Oh, okay.
Like I guess Martine's more of a minimalist because I will basically destroy it.
A lot of philosophy in this.
Covering it with the fabric anyway, so no worms are going to get out. The more ventilation, the better, I figure.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned philosophy because Kaz was saying that we should do this good cop, bad cop routine where I'm very like technical about the worms and Kaz goes on philosophical worm tangents and
I get it.
Yeah,
I
we've
I'm
come-
inspired on any.
You said the void. I was like, I dig worm philosophy tangent.
Yeah, you can go there.
Remember Leecha, the great worm philosopher?
I just got that.
It's a slow burn. Like
So Martine just scraped out all of the little plastic filings that ended up in our bin because those are not ideal for worms.
okay.
Probably like it might not hurt them all that badly, like they're not going to eat it, but if they were tiny enough pieces, they could eat it, get it stuck in there. And
yeah. Not to mention it's compost at the end of the day. You don't
yeah,
want
you're going to be putting this in your
petrochemicals.
garden. Like you
Yeah.
don't need chunks of plastic in there.
Okay.
Cool.
So just flipped over the big bin so we can start drilling into there. And so they've got these like divots, just the way the mold is. There's some upper and lower parts, so you just want to drill the holes into to the parts that the water is going to settle in.
So when you flip it over the raised areas.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That would have been really sweet if you did bring ice cream. So kind of disappointed.
Good party trick, or party joke.
Yeah, worms are not a great potluck item though.
No, like if like someone just brought them to like put in your compost, you're like, thanks, man.
I didn't bring a meal to share. I brought sustainability to share.
Brought a meal for the worms.
So with this tiny little drill bit, you want to be a little more careful because they do break very easily. So just
The bit?
yeah, the bit will
Oh,
break. So
okay.
just try to keep it straight up and down, 90 degrees, and go straight into the bin. If it's wobbling around a lot, it might snap off.
So you don't want to put a lot of these holes as well because
Yeah,
You
so
don't
you can
want to?
really just pepper it with holes.
Yeah, because like the organic matter and stuff is going to accumulate and create little blockages and dams where the water
So
isn't
you
going to get
do
through.
want a lot of holes.
You want a lot
Oh,
of
okay.
these ones, yeah.
All right.
Ooh,
Okay.
perfect.
Very nice.
Nice. For future reference, should one use hearing protection when doing this?
PPE is always recommended.
Yeah, you could be wearing gloves and steel-toed shoes and goggles and ear protection, but
But we're cool.
I don't think the decibel level is really that dangerous for you.
Nice.
Worm composters like to live on the...
All right. So we got our holes in the bottom, the top bin. What's next?
So that's all the holes that need to be made. So at this point, we can probably fix this landscaping fabric onto the lid. So
Okay,
Martine
scissors?
can just slap it on. Yeah, some scissors would be great.
I'm just gonna stand still too.
So the first bin that I made, I put it on the inside because I thought, hey, it'll be hidden away and then it won't look bad. But there's a bunch of moisture on the inside and
Oh.
that only lasts so long. So now I think it could look pretty cool on top anyway.
Where does one get landscaping fabric?
Anywhere, like Home Depot, Canadian Tire. Yeah.
Cool.
And I think this is like a corn-based fiber as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So also biodegradable.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah, I heard that corn husks don't do great in compost. Is that true?
I don't have a lot of experience with that. I've definitely put corn, like even whole corn cobs, chopped up in my composter, and they break down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem.
Urban myth. Maybe I made up.
I'm glad. No, like we're slaying myths left and right.
Okay, so
So I'm trying to.
It's almost like this rule was possibly used for compost. Making it bad.
Behind there.
Ah! You just cut off the end of my finger!
There's blood everywhere.
It's incredibly worse scene.
You can only make a bandage out of this composting material.
Good thing worms love to eat blood.
wait, is that true? Do they?
I would generally not recommend putting like bloody things in your compost bin. Actually, like meats, raw meats.
Not good.
No,
I've heard that.
Yeah.
Should I just go
Not
like
a
this?
compost.
Yeah, you can even go like
So don't put my severed finger.
So I'm trying to just cover the holes, right?
yeah, essentially. So we can even go like along there.
It's another thing we can learn about today is how to dispose of severed fingers.
They're gonna say bodies. I'm like, compost would help. Look.
Very slowly. If you're not in a hurry, you can dispose of bodies.
All right.
Great. We got our sheet cut to size. Now we just need to tear off some duct tape and slap that around the edges.
Okay.
So is aesthetics a part of this? Like you bring over your like worm harvest friend and you're like, wow, that guy has a nice box. Like look at the nice edges. He like used very colorful.
Vermicomposters are always flexing.
Like the worms themselves. You know, the worms have muscles.
Yeah, that's basically all they do.
Yeah, they're pretty much a muscle.
I take care with my bins. The last 3 I've made were presents for people,
Aw.
so it's nice to give them a nice looking bin.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll like drill the holes in the shape of like a heart or a
Oh,
star.
Or
Wow.
their name.
Wow.
And they open the bin and look on the other side. It's like, or you could also drill, I'm watching you.
There they are.
Okay.
Could you like drill out the alphabet and have like compost like Ouija or like the Stranger Things, like worms cover certain letters? Oh god.
And they would speak to you, they
Yeah.
can communicate with you.
They're gonna say,
Uh-oh. Oh, see, that's why I ripped it with my teeth.
That's like the only way to rip duct tape, by the way. We should have actually gone through the procedure. If you're not using your teeth, you're doing it wrong. Oh no! Okay, we're down.
Martine's managed to fold the tape over onto it, which is critical failure.
I have scissors
We'll
and...
just burn this one and start again.
Yeah, we're just going to toss this bin in the fire pit.
You like?
Good, I've done a lot of that today, so...
Oh, that's fine.
Is it just more of like a...
Yeah, it's just aesthetics.
It's fine.
If you're fine with it, I mean, it is going to be in a dark closet for the most part. I don't see the light of day too much.
So I should keep this in a dark closet.
They prefer dark spaces, and this lets a little bit of light in,
Oh,
so
okay.
I wouldn't recommend, by this I mean the landscaping fabric.
How warm does it have to be?
I looked into that a little bit. I would say, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be room temperature, but they'll be happiest at room temperature, so...
Okay.
Yeah, there's really no reason to keep them any lower than that. But they would probably continue eating compost down to like 10 degrees, I would guess.
Okay.
Maybe lower, but yeah, if it gets too cold, their metabolism will slow down. And
They'll survive, but the composting will...
They probably won't eat much.
Okay.
And another important thing to consider is the worms are only one part of the composting process in the bin. They've got gut bacteria, there's tons of bacteria in the soil, and that activity will slow down when you cool the bin down.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
the worms have a partner in crime. So we've affixed our landscaping fabric to the lid, and now we've got a perforated tall bin and our footer bin, so we can stack them all together and call it a worm bin.
I like to sometimes put like a can or something, like
Like
a...
a tuna can kind of thing.
Yeah, just to prop it up so it's not sitting in its juices.
What if I have a tuna can?
We could crush some of these beer cans,
Oh yeah?
possibly.
Put a couple crushed beer cans inside the outer bin, and then your tall inner
Like
bin.
crush
will
them
sit
like
inside
this
it.
way? Like,
Yeah, just
Yes.
flatten them.
never done this before.
I'm shot.
That's pretty good. Yeah. That way your warm juices have about 2 inches to build up before you have to empty it. And when you take it out, you're not going to place your wet bin on your clean kitchen floor.
Right.
Yeah, so if you have another bin lid, like we could have brought you one, we don't have a lot of extras, but you can use that extra bin lid as a platform to put your bin on so it doesn't leak all over the floor.
I specifically got half the amount of lids to bins when I was
Yeah.
at Walmart because I was like, why are we going to
We
need...
don't need the extra one, but
So then we tear up newspaper?
That's
Alright.
right.
Alright.
so why do we add newspaper to the bin, Martine? Do the worms like to read?
Well, composting is a process of nitrogen and carbon, and all that goodness that you'll be adding is nitrogen matter, and you need to add carbon matter to neutralize the smell and balance out the chemical processes so that the bacterial populations are happy and not smelly.
So worms need a balanced diet, basically. They need
Essentially,
fiber and they need sugars, that kind of thing.
It also keeps the moisture level at a good point because it wicks up a lot of it and they're not swimming around in all the juices from your apples and whatever else you'll be tossing in there. So I'm ripping into like 1 inch in width strips. I like to rip, like if you were reading the paper, if you're reading across, that's how I like to rip it. That's how...
I thought you were going to tell us like which specific newspaper you
I like to start with the horoscopes.
It's very digestible, right?
Yeah, the way that the newspaper is printed, the paper is made, like, it doesn't rip really nicely if you try ripping it like that. You get chunks if you try rip it up down, so if you rip it left to right, it goes in these really nice strips. And you can, like, fold your newspaper in half and go,
Wow.
yeah, or try doing, like, a whole phone book at once. Like, you have to test your wrist strength on this one.
Is there any type of paper that you wouldn't put in there? Like, should it just be newspaper?
Yeah, newspaper is fine. From my understanding, they use vegetable ink, like soy ink, so it's non-toxic for the worms. But generally, like, newspaper texture is the paper that you want to add. Nothing glossy.
I will give my worms like non-laminated coffee cup sleeves. If I have like a cardboard paper coffee cup sleeve, I'll tear that up and put that in there. They'll eat that. And I'll even put in like bills and some mail that I get, like credit card statements. I'll just tear that up and put that in there too.
Yeah, why not?
They don't
Who needs some?
Yeah.
So carbon matter is anything that's like the brown stuff. So it could be leaves or
sawdust, straw,
sawdust.
newspaper.
I would caution against using leaves because you could introduce different bugs and stuff.
fungi. There's all kinds of fungi.
Diseases.
Well.
So I would use that in my outdoor bins, but not my indoor ones.
And if you're going to use sawdust, if you have access to sawdust, you want to make sure it's not treated because they treat wood with like a copper, and that'll poison your worms real quick. No cedar sawdust either. That would be toxic to your worms and allelopathic as well, so it actually inhibits plant growth.
Oh.
You don't want to use cedar either.
Okay.
Jeez. Wow, there's a lot of like particular hands. Thanks. I'm so glad you guys are here. Like, it's like how I don't know how you find out that out otherwise.
Are we going to just put the worms in with this newspaper?
Yep.
Oh.
We'll put the newspaper into the bin.
So we don't need actual, like, compost. Like, I mean...
It's a good idea to start them with some food as well. Like the worms that I've got for you here, I haven't taken a lot of castings with them, so in our little soy ice cream container, I've probably picked out maybe 40-ish worms, some big, some small, some mating, and you can see them in there. There are a few little dudes, and
Oh my goodness.
some bigger guys chilling out in there.
Are these a particular variety of worm?
These are red wrigglers,
Okay.
which is like, what's their Latin name? It's like Asapoda fetida or something.
So you couldn't just go grab earthworms out of your garden?
Couldn't use earthworms. The thing is, your garden earthworms are a deep digging worm, like they're a burrowing worm, so they'll overwinter in these deep burrows and they do their composting in those dens, so they'll go a few feet underground to eat, whereas these red wrigglers are surface feeders, so they'll hang out at the top of your bin and they'll eat lots of food, and they're really ideal worms for an indoor compost bin.
Okay. Nice.
Trying to find some of their pods, but not having a whole lot of luck.
What's a pod?
That's where they...
Egg sac.
Yeah, they're
big
egg
sacs.
sacs.
They're small. They're like that. You see that little translucent pod there at the top?
Oh, okay.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And that'll have a few worm babies in it, I expect.
Ooh.
So, I mentioned before, worms don't like light. They will, if we put them on top, like I just did, they are going to do their very best to burrow and escape the light. And that's something you can use in harvesting your compost bin. If you notice you've got a whole lot of compost and you want to separate their castings from themselves, you can dump it all out onto a tarp and spread it pretty thin and cover half of it with a tarp and put a lamp on it, and they'll wriggle off to the side that's been covered with a tarp. And you can just take that half and yeah, you've got a cleaner bin.
So castings is just like
Worm poop.
Worm poop. Okay. So is that in itself just like soil, or do you have to mix it with something? Like,
So-
would you use it as fertilizer, kind of?
Yeah, I would use that as fertilizer, and I would even
I would
dilute
do that for sure.
Yeah. So you would take some of their castings, dissolve it, maybe one part castings to at least 2 parts water, probably more like 10 parts water, and pour it into your plants like you would water them.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. You can also add an air pump and oxygenate that solution, and let it bubble for a couple hours, maybe a day, and that's called compost tea, because the bacteria will grow really well in that, and the bacteria actually unlocks those nutrients for the plant to absorb. So that's kind of the biggest benefit. Isn't the nutrients themselves, but these bacteria that allow the plant to absorb the nutrients.
It's even catchy. Like, that's clever. Compost tea.
Yeah. Compost kombucha.
So if you do have any stuff you want to feed to your worms, you could add that. It's probably a good idea even to like moisten this paper, I would say, a little bit, because
Certainly.
as they try to crawl across the paper, they'll lose moisture off of their skin and they'll dry out and maybe even get stuck to it. So it'd be good to like dribble a bit of water over it, mist it, give it some nice wet food that they can eat. And then worms will eat probably like half their weight in a week. What was it? Something like that.
Sorry.
It's about that, about half their weight in food in a week. So we gave them we gave you like a quarter of an ice cream container of worms.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to want to feed them half of that every week for a little while until their population doubles. Then you can feed them more. So my recommendation would be start them small, keep an eye on it, and when that food is done, add a little more. So don't overfeed them, because if you overfeed them, that's when you get mold problems. You'll get other insects moving into here, and they could overpower your worms and provide a really nasty environment for them.
Yeah.
So just go slow for them to start with.
So other than meat, what are some other things we should avoid putting in here?
Like I said, treated wood would not go
Yeah.
in there. Bones, if you've got larger seeds, like they won't eat through an apricot pit. They won't eat through an avocado seed, for instance.
Though, if you want to germinate avocado seeds really well, my best germination, it comes from accidental germination in bins.
I've germinated apricots in the bin as well. Lots of peppers and
Because it gets
things like
quite hot. Like, composting is a very hot process, and there's moisture pretty much and darkness, which is everything a seed wants for germination. So sometimes I'll throw in all my scraps and come back 2 months later and find that I've got some really scraggly avocados starting up.
So cool.
That's neat. Can you actually grow an avocado plant, like indoors here?
You can grow anything indoors if you have
Alright.
patience and money and energy expenses. Yeah, I have a few avocado trees growing, just like in my friend's living room. I think his cats ate them though.
Oh.
What's that? But yeah, no, they grow fairly well. I mean, maybe in 20 years, when we've got the climate of California, we can grow these avocados.
Yeah.
It's really on theme about sustainability. Like,
Climate change is coming.
Yeah, prepare for climate change. Start your avocado trees now.
Start your avocado trees and your worm composters now.
we're in the future.
So if... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to list off a few other
Yeah.
things that you can't feed your worms.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't feed them most prepared foods, so salty and greasy foods, or even like high refined sugar foods. So like things that are unhealthy for us are generally unhealthy for worms as well. So don't put any like greasy stuff in there. What else is not good? I had a huge list, but basically, if you wouldn't eat it, don't feed it to them. So like household chemicals and cleaners, like if you've wiped a surface down, even with like a vinegar solution, I wouldn't give them that. I wouldn't give them those acids. If you're using Windex and a piece of paper towel on your window, don't throw that in your bin. They're not going to be stoked by that.
But just like a piece of wet paper towel.
Yeah, a piece of wet
itself would
paper
be
towel
fine.
is fine. If you wiped up like a spill of juice or coffee with it, you could give that to them. Some people say not to give your worms coffee grounds because they're a bit acidic, but I haven't had any problem with it.
Oh,
They
okay.
seem pretty happy with it, and they're a little bit greedy too, so they appreciate that. And worms also have gizzards, so they have like a secondary food processing chamber, and they actually need some minerals in there. So you actually need a bit of grit in your bin. So if you can give them a little bit of like sand or crushed eggshells or something like that, they'll use that. They'll actually use that to process their food.
Another great way to harvest worms is if you have an avocado that's gone overripe and you're not going to eat it, just put the whole avocado in there, unopened, and they'll find a way to break through. And if you go back to it in a couple days or a week and crack it open, it's just going to be like a worm avocado. You'll have the pit and like worms just swarming through it, so you can just take that whole avocado and
Use
put
it
it
as
in
a
the
prank.
oven. Yeah. Put it in your bag of water balloons and
Oh god.
So when you're feeding, you generally want to balance your greens and browns 50-50. So like Marcin was saying, greens is anything that's coming out of your kitchen really. And then, if you add a cup of those, you want to add about a cup of like packed newspaper or other brown materials.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, did I get water on me?
No, I crushed a beer can over myself.
Cool. So this week we have a couple of very special guests who have come to teach us all about vermicomposting. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
We can introduce each other.
Yeah.
That's fair.
That sounds
Okay.
good.
Okay, so this is Marcin Makarevich, and Marcin is a recent graduate of an agriculture and food business management program. He's very passionate about sustainable food, about permaculture, and about building community around food, and all around good dude.
Nice.
Beautiful. What the fuck?
Well, this is Kaz Haikowski, stand-up guy. Kaz is my business partner in our company Spruce Permaculture, which we founded 2 summers ago. And he runs the show at the moment, and Kaz is a powerhouse. I don't know what else to say.
I also love food.
Kaz loves to burn his food. He's a Francis Mallman type.
Yes,
Oh.
cooking with fire.
I wouldn't have gotten that reference at all.
I was gonna look it up later.
Thank you.
I would laugh when I'm editing this. I'd look up the name. I'd be like, haha, that is a good joke.
Cool. So, you guys founded Spruce Permaculture. Did I hear that correctly?
Mm-hmm.
What is Spruce Permaculture?
Spruce Permaculture started off as an edible landscaping company a couple of summers ago, and we dabbled in producing food forests and producing basically edible front and backyards for clients around the city. And we've since evolved into something more like what we call an urban food consultancy. So we do that same food producing landscaping, but we also do a lot more educational stuff. We do sessions around worm composting like this, around food forestry, and we also do some indoor gardening work. So we're getting into and doing some research into hydroponics and aquaponics, and actually bringing food production into people's homes during the winter, which is extremely crucial here in Edmonton, where our growing season is so short.
Yeah, wow. So would you say it's a lot of work for the average person to do this sort of thing, or is it just sort of more like a learning curve, and then after you sort of get used to it, it becomes kind of normal, I guess?
Yeah, I'd say it's just like a habit. It's like part of my lifestyle to save my scraps and throw them in the bin. No more thought goes into it than if I were to just throw it in the garbage.
Cool. Very cool.
I have one question, because this word seems to be buzzing around. What do you two mean by permaculture? Because I know it has like a very sophisticated root, and it's a certain I'm not going to use the term philosophy, but it's something that bleeds into all aspects of life. It's like essentially systems working together in like a very efficient, larger system. Reusing one's scraps for a compost, you simultaneously promote life and you get rid of your own remains. Mm-hmm. So, do you guys have a better definition? Because that's what I heard from a PowerPoint elsewhere.
So permaculture is a design system that mimics nature's patterns. So the way an ecosystem functions is one thing's waste. There's no waste essentially because that's the input for something else, and it's all cyclical. There's no linear progression with a waste product at the end. So permaculture aims to create physical and social systems that replicate the success that nature has had.
And one of my teachers uses this phrase a lot, which I think is very illustrated. He says that in nature, there's no such thing as work and there's no such thing as waste, right? Those things don't exist until humans enter a system. We make work, we make waste. And that's really just a failure of design. If a system is well designed, it ought not have work and it ought never to have waste, right? So introducing a worm bin into your home is a terrific example of that, right? Rather than sending your waste by truck to a landfill where it'll break down into methane gas and contribute to climate change, instead, with a single action change, no more energy used, you put it in a different bin, your worms eat it, and you get fertilizer, right? That's just like basic permaculture under your sink.
That was like almost like Socratic. Both of you like one up me. I'm like, that is exactly what I was looking for. Thank you. They said much less eloquently on that PowerPoint. They're like, yeah, there's no waste in normal systems. That was really well put.
So do you do like other types of what maybe the average person would consider unusual in your day-to-day life to sort of promote this idea of less work, less waste?
In our day-to-day lives. Martine, do you want to take the start of that? I think your lifestyle changes are maybe more radical in mine than that.
Maybe, yeah. There's, one thing that I am currently doing is getting most of my food from Edmonton's dumpsters, because that's a waste that I've turned into a stream of resources for myself. What else have I done?
Even just like things that the average person might not even think of. Like, I know that when I lived in Ontario, I was living in Peterborough, and it was like recycling and composting was a lot bigger there than it seems to be here. And I found like myself almost slipping into habits of just like throwing things in the trash because everyone else does, and like we don't even have a recycling bin at my house. We just have like a weird basket that we got from a grocery store or something. So like it's maybe something that's become second nature to you, but the average person might not even think of.
I mean, Kaz and I are both trying our best to reduce our waste and have that zero waste goal in mind. And I don't know how permaculture that is. Like, create no waste is one of the tenets. So I'd say we do that to a great extent. And then one social thing, an example that I just thought of was that my roommate and I alternate who cooks meals, and so we have the resilience of supporting one another and have that social engagement. And you know that you cook dinner one day a week, and then 3 other days a week you're going to have food, and you don't have to put that work in, but you do the dishes that night, kind of thing. So it's very, I don't know, broad definition of permaculture, but that's a resilient system where we're depending on one another, and the system depends on kind of the makeup of its parts. It's not like a standalone survival kind of thing.
Yeah.
I have one joke question. Because I saw it earlier when we were throwing in View Weekly. I read the title before we threw it in there. Into the compost bin. That you said that we need some papers. And that there's some we shouldn't do. But I'm going to ask you independently. If you could compost something made out of carbon, maybe a written article that you made in your life, what would it be? Is it like
made in your life?
Yes. So like a bad paper, a bad love letter, something full of regret that you feed to the worms and you let it be eaten. Is there anything like that?
Oh, that's a good question.
Like, once I get my philosophy degree, boom. I think it'd be deep. Yeah. Into the abyss. Leacha would be proud. Wherever he is now. Because I was so excited. Like, there's a Lonely Island video where they're like, throw this old man, throw him in the river. Pikachu, throw him in the river. So I just thought, I'm like, what would I throw into the compost bin?
Just to get rid of.
Yeah. And not even get rid of it. It turns into new life. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's true.
So
it's not waste.
Yeah, it can almost be something that you want to transform
to
rather
give a new
than
life to it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a good. Yeah, not like everything I burned today.
Do you want to share that story? Because I thought it was very okay.
Anyone who has me on Instagram already knows, but I burned a bunch of shit today that I probably shouldn't have burned. Probably released
should have composted
terrible chemicals in the atmosphere. But it was cathartic for me, so
Burning is
That's
a
fine,
little
just-
more cathartic than worm composting.
I would say so, yeah.
I generally see the paper in there for a few weeks to a
Yeah.
month afterwards, so you kind of still have to keep
But
engaging
there
with
is
it.
also some, like, satisfaction in that slow decay. I mean,
Yeah,
I would
depends
say.
what you're going
yeah.
for. It's good to have options, though.
Yeah.
Have you thought something up, guys?
I don't know. I'm trying to think back on papers I've written or journals I've written, but even embarrassing stuff, I'm happy to have it, and I do keep a lot of like my old journals or writing from when I was a kid because it's fun to flip through things that I wrote when I was like 8 or 12, right, and see
Yeah.
like, oh, that's what I was thinking of then. So I don't know if any of that I would want to compost. I'm still kind of holding on to that.
That's beautiful. That's like permaculture in essence. You're like, this isn't waste, right? It contributes to
I'm also
something new.
hoarding it all. But if I had to compost something, I'd probably compost like the Edmonton Sun. Like, I'd put a lot more of that
Yeah,
in my
that's
compost
what I was
bin
hoping
and
that
try
we
to
would have.
try to turn that into something more positive. But it just happens that I read You Weekly a lot more, so that ends up in my compost bin more, and I'm sure they'd be honored.
To answer your question, in grade 5,
Yes, this I'm already
in grade 5 at lunchtime, our teacher left the room, so we had no supervision. So we were like dissing each other, and some kid said that my face was rated R, and so I said, "Well, your face is off the scale," and then he started crying, and so I got in trouble, and I got a conduct report, and so I started crying, and it was a big ordeal. So I don't know. I don't think that scrap of paper is in existence anymore. But if it were, I would compost that.
That's a good
Yeah.
answer.
That is a good answer. And this kind of, I don't know if you have any more questions, but this would lead well into our this week's variety.
Yeah, no, I'm open to tangents.
So every week we do a segment called Variety, where we play a game, perform a thought experiment, something of that nature. This week we have just a series of sort of questions we came up with
Okay.
Trivia.
that we're gonna. It's not trivia, although we did consider doing a sustainability quiz, but honestly it was really boring what I found online. So we're gonna ask you some questions. There's no right answer, or maybe there is. But yeah, so the first one, you've heard of Would You Rather?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Would you rather fight 50 red Wriggler-sized park rangers or one park ranger-sized red Wriggler?
So, well, the easier fight would definitely be 50 red regular-sized park rangers, because that would be 50 very tiny people.
Right.
Maybe with handguns, very tiny handguns.
I mean, they might be armed.
Yeah, which would be amusing. It would be very fun. But if I really wanted a fair fight, I would pick the man-sized red wriggler, which would be
Right.
unbelievable. Or do I have to fight it? Can I just get it to compost things for me?
No, you gotta
I have
fight
to fight
it. Yeah.
I would fight the 50 small ones.
I would fight the big one because I think it'd be annoying. It'd be like ants crawling up your leg.
I would
But
just
they've
mush
got
them.
little
Yeah,
guns that will maybe sting you. I just think it would be, and you get like 47, and then like you find one like in your hair.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's a good point.
I'd rather fight a ranger-sized red wriggler, and then I could possibly mount it. Like if I
Ride around
got it
cars.
to submit, I could possibly tame it and have it be my steed.
Well, because like when earlier we were saying that it's just like basically muscle, right? Like that sounds pretty terrifying.
And it could wrap around you and
Yeah,
crush you. It's all muscle. Like
It's always
it's
flexing.
like an anaconda, like a slimy anaconda.
Oh god. Yeah, it would be like just a really gross boa constrictor, basically.
And if you cut it in half, it would regrow a head, and you'd have to fight two of them.
That's not true.
Oh, it is actually. That happens. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, I want to know now.
Me too, I don't know.
That's not
Oh,
true.
I looked into it.
really?
Yeah, there are a number of species of worms, and I believe red wrigglers are one of them, that will regrow a head if you cut it off.
See, I'm pretty sure that they're anatomically asymmetrical.
They are
human
anatomically
organs.
asymmetrical. It's true. Like their ganglia are at the front, obviously. Their hearts are at the front. But I did some digging. Like I read into it, and there are a number of worm species that will regrow a head
Okay,
from a tail.
Can we do a fact check?
Yeah,
here?
we should fact check it.
Okay, so Cody and I aren't really into fact checking. We
Okay,
really
that's
just
fine.
prefer to
You just give them you're probably authorities.
like
Well, if you-
discuss things until we come to a maybe false conclusion.
See, I was skeptical of it myself, right? I was ready to dismiss it, and when I was researching it to present, I was like,
interesting.
I was surprised to discover that there are a number of species that will regrow a head.
You seem very skeptical.
Yeah, because I
Okay.
also did my own research when I had a presentation at Resilience Festival last year, and I could have sworn that it said red wrigglers are not one of those.
But you're saying there are species
there are.
that will.
Yeah, like nematodes and whatnot.
Oh, see, I was even finding that there are like macro-sized worms that will regrow a head, not just
Are
nematodes.
nematodes smaller worms?
And nematodes are super small. I don't even think they're worms. Like are they worms?
I think they're classified as worms.
Maybe. Yeah.
Oh,
Very tiny.
wow. It's a really interesting tidbit to end that question on. So,
That'll do. Flight to the net.
are nematodes worms?
And nematodes worms, and do they regrow a head?
Yeah, ooh.
Okay, Cody came up with this question earlier.
Let's hear my terrible question I wrote in the past.
This is a great question. What are you talking about? So, what would you consider the most ecologically, environmentally friendly way to die?
Yeah, that is my question.
Die.
And I'm gonna raise some that I've heard. Is it better to like be turned into a tree via be compost or be eaten by a bear? Which one would help the environment more? I want the most bang for my existential buck.
So is this independent of, let's say, your age at death? Like,
Yes.
Like if you're gonna die, you're gonna die when you're gonna die. Maybe 82.
That's an accurate guess.
Higher than the average one.
But it's the method of death that we're talking
Someone's
The
ambitious.
method of death is what we're referring to, yeah.
Mhm.
about. What's
the method of death-
sustainable cause of death.
Yeah.
But also disposal in the case of getting eaten by a
Like,
bear.
I mean,
That's pretty good, honestly.
Pretty good.
Because well,
Traditional burial is not really sustainable at all, I would
Well,
say.
yeah,
Burial.
like Himalayan burials are great because
Yeah.
they'll just cast your body out in the Congo's will eat your flesh and distribute it.
yeah.
I thought you guys were making a pun with bear and burial. I'm like, oh, when you get eaten by a bear for ecological reasons,
No,
it's
that's
a
all
burial.
you. That's all.
I was like, man, there's a term for it. What? I need to read more. Or read less. We'll find out.
I mean, yeah, I guess because like the way that you die and then the disposal of your body are usually not like they're independent of one another.
Let's set up a situation. You have you're suddenly inflicted with terminal plot disease. For some reason, all your organs will shut down in 4 days, and then and also because of there's funding for plot disease, you've had $1 million to arrange your death, and no one else can do it because you don't have friends, I guess, in the situation.
Okay.
4 days, as much money as you want, most ecological death, and now it's a TV show just to up the stakes, I guess.
Well, I'm just I have an idea for what to
Ooh.
do with my body, but in terms of actual death, give me a second now.
And that was the TV show.
Well, yeah, because I want some competition in it. Because you're probably both going to be satisfied with your death. But imagine if there was an audience saying, that's not ecological. We need more bears. So we need some audience.
Whose death is it anyway?
That's a great show. Exactly. It's improv ecological death. They all show up and they try and get the most thematically related death. I'm going to go for eating by a bear. That's how I really want to go out. Burial.
And it makes for good TV as well.
Yeah, exactly. Good podcast material.
Have you seen The Revenant? That sounds like a terrible way to die.
I saw it, and I can't remember if I made this up or if I read it somewhere, but I heard that when you watch Revenant, you drink as much water as you can, because then you'll really have to use the washroom. And when you really have to use the washroom and you're watching a survival movie, it's so much more intense. Because there's so much more tension. You see that person suffering for food, you're like, I have to use the washroom so bad. I can only imagine how he feels. Except there's scenes where they might relieve themselves, and those are the worst. You're like, I wish I were fighting a bear. At least I could relieve myself of life.
Okay, well, I'll
You
give
got it.
my answer. Do you
Nice.
have an answer to...
I've only tried to rule out ones that are the least sustainable.
Well, actually, there is a follow-up question, which is, which would be the least
Right.
used?
Okay, great.
So
Well,
save that.
Good.
You're ahead of the game on that one, Kaz. So I would go to the like. I would go donate blood and like get them to like extract as much of my blood as possible.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's I think a good start. And then like the actual death doesn't matter so much. Like maybe suffocation because it would be a little painless, maybe euphoric, versus bleeding out or whatever. But then I would ask that my body gets turned into cat food because then you would reduce the need to purchase some animal-based food for those cats, for those carnivorous cuties.
Would you donate your organs as well?
I think I would. Yeah, donate as much as possible. But you know what? No. Fuck that. That's not sustainable because then I'm allowing other people's lifespans to extend.
Drain on the environment.
Exactly. They'll consume more. Yeah.
But then that brings up the question of multiple sustainabilities, multiple pillars of sustainability, right? What about social sustainability, right? What if all of those organs could go to 24 orphans who had a perfectly good life ahead of them, full of love and happiness, right? It makes me think, there's this idea in permaculture of the highest use principle. So how can you, for any input in a system or any amount of energy, get the most out of it, right? So if you're going to die, right?
That's true. I mean, that was the original idea with donating blood.
Yeah. Well,
to not donate my organs would contradict that a little bit.
Donate all of your blood. Donate every single organ. Have them just take you apart alive.
Can you donate blood post-mortem? Can they kill you and then real quickly just drain your blood? Or do they have to drain you till you die?
I don't think we're experts on that subject, but I don't think it's very long after death that your blood begins to congeal and ceases to be useful. So you take as much of it out as alive as possible. Probably dope me up with the most sustainable painkiller possible. So I'll just be smoking some high CBD bud, and then they'll put me in not a deep freeze because obviously that requires electricity use. But I'm just sitting outside in the Canadian winter, and they're just slowly harvesting my fresh, steaming organs from my body as I'm just ventilating away on this smoke. Yeah. And they just slowly take me apart. My family's around me, loving it. And then
they have bud too, right?
The rest of it, they can just process into cat food or something. Anything they can't give to an orphan.
Anything they can't give to an orphan, they give to the cats.
That was a masterpiece.
Wow.
That was the third act. Yeah, that was good. You're like, yeah, that's good. But here's what, and it's in particular detail. I did like how you segue into that pillar of sustainability. That's could you touch more on that? Just because I think it's a rich vein of thought. So you said social sustainability. What would the other ones be? Because that's the only one I've heard.
The three that I think the three typical ones are social, environmental, and economic sustainability, right? But as permaculturists, and I think even many people who work in sustainability and care about sustainability are realizing that definition itself is a little bit passé. The idea of simply sustaining is not quite enough. We can sustain an economy forever, right? We have been sustaining a pretty shitty economy for a very long time. What we want to transition to is thinking about maybe a regenerative system. So how do we produce regenerative social systems, regenerative economics, regenerative ecologies that actually improve and strengthen over time? And that's another part of permaculture design. It's not just to sustain, but to improve.
That's really cool. I like that. But there's a lot of, because I study philosophy, there's a lot of, I'm going to say agriculture references in philosophy. And one of the philosophers said, I can't remember which one, and I'll have to look it up. It's probably some Greek dude. That, he'd be happy, or society will reach its apex, when people plant seeds that they will never see grow into trees. Right. So it's not only do you pay your past debts, you pay it forward, and you give people a better starting off than what you were given. And I think that's beautiful. Yeah. Regenerative is a really good term for that, because it is no longer sustaining something. It's not like a body waiting to die. It is something that's growing and thriving. Now, not everyone wants the most ecological death ever conceived to history, so but we've done it now.
So what was the least ecological.
Good
death.
segue.
Yeah.
The least environmentally friendly death,
Yeah.
like, would probably be like being in the middle of the reactor core when Chernobyl went off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Being like the cause of it, like
The
running in there
cause.
and like hitting a bunch of
Being the one who fucked it up, and
Yeah.
then basically irradiating like a 30-mile radius and the atmosphere for generations to come.
I see it like an action movie. Like some guy hears he's gonna die. He's like, I know what I'm gonna do. And you got Chernobyl. He goes in, beats up a bunch of scientists, sees all the buttons. There's one big red button that says "fuck it up." I guess he smokes a cigarette. No, what's the least sustainable narcotic?
Narcotic?
Yeah.
Cigarettes narcotic?
I don't know. Probably. Like,
Just smoke some meth.
because you
and
smoke
then-
bud for the sustainable death. What's like the least sustainable way of like?
Meth.
Meth?
I'm gonna guess. I don't know. You have to like.
That's probably
do a
pretty
lot.
energy intensive. Yeah.
So yeah, you just suddenly use the reactor to make some meth. You eat it. I don't know what you do with meth. And you dive straight into the core.
Just munch down some meth.
Yeah. How much? Yeah, like because that person's so hardcore they don't even use the meth because that implies some usage.
Hardcore.
We need least amount of usage, so they eat the meth. They don't even get high.
Oh my
They
gosh.
jump into the core and boom, that event.
Yeah.
Coming to a theater near you. Like the most sustainable death is like a beautiful play and it takes as like a third act. It's like brilliant, and the least sustainable death is an action movie. Says a lot about art.
Yeah. Okay, I have one more question here that Cody also came up
Oh
with.
no.
It's about animals.
Oh yeah, okay. If we were to look up to one animal as an exemplar in their like contributions to permaculture, what would it be? Who's the most ecological animal?
Also, are we using the word ecological correctly? I feel
Oh.
like we keep interchanging it with environmentally friendly.
My bad.
What does ecological mean?
I wish I knew what eco meant in Greek, because logic means word, so like reason, speech. So whatever eco means in Greek, it's reason, speech concerning eco.
Something that we'll never know.
Yeah, we'll never know. It's also an economic. Oh, I do know. Because an economy comes from oiko nomos, so nomos is like a law, and oikos is your name of your household. So an ecology would be reason, speech, or words concerning your household. And perhaps in a Greek view or in a different world, our environment is very much our larger household. So that's my guess, based on what I know of language. And it could be completely wrong, but I'm going to risk it. So the most environmentally friendly is the term I'm going to use now.
Alright.
To avoid upsetting Greek fanatics out there.
So, what animal do we look up to then?
Yes.
That is the question.
Yeah, that's the yeah.
I can think of one off the top of my head, but I want to delve a little deeper and see if I can think of some others.
The first thing that comes to mind isn't an animal at all. It's just fungi.
Fungi, yeah.
Oh, shoot.
Okay, so let's broaden it to organism.
Yeah.
So your organism would be fungi.
Yeah, because they close the system. They decompose everything back to its building blocks so that they can get built up again into something.
Mm-hmm.
Without fungi, decomposition would take a whole heck of a lot longer, and we would just have corpses.
There'd be a lot more just dead stuff lying around.
Yeah, and
But even that makes me think, like, I don't want to steal your thunder, but like, the fungi takes responsibility for the world's waste, right? Like, that's an extremely admirable trait. It's like, you know, I will handle your leavings. Like, I will clean up after you. Like, you know, that's extremely noble, because you know, all the other animals are just roaming around, killing shit and leaving it all over the place without even thinking about it. And the fungus is just, you know, they're the one in the background. It's like, don't worry, I got you. Like,
But
clean it up.
if you're thinking of it as more of a cycle, it's not really like if you kind of eliminate this whole idea of waste, you can sort of think of it more as just like they're just feeding into each other, and neither is producing waste because
Yeah.
they're just like
No one's really at the bottom or at the top of this
Yeah.
cycle because it's a wheel that's constantly spinning.
Wow. That's beautiful. Like, what a tangent.
yeah, they're like the yin to our yang of creation.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
That's a really good a reference, because I'm just going to plug in more philosophy with Taoism, because the whole belief is that the pursuit of any ideal, be it good or bad, leads to its own destruction, so there ought to be harmony. Right? Without light, there's no day. Without light, there's no dark. Without day, there's no night. The two opposites working in together is what creates harmony. So I really like that view, and that's weird how it touches into philosophy, into that. Very cool. I'm impressed. Learning about myself. I thought I was learning about compost.
Isn't that always the case? The animal that I would have said is probably like the honeybee, or just like a bee in general, because like they're a beautiful organism for one thing. They're a beautiful superorganism, and they have this incredible way of working together and looking at their system. It's impossible to tell, who's the leader, who's guiding who, right? So, like, as a lesson for us as humans, I'm not exactly sure what that might be. Like, maybe some kind of like selflessness and thinking bigger than yourself, doing it for the hive. Which I think is noble and something to aspire to. Like, how can your actions build up into something better? How can we all be greater than the sum of our parts, rather than just sort of toiling on our own for our own selfish ends?
Out of I don't know, unused remains, we get poetry. It's a byproduct of compost.
I admire like flying fish. I think they're pretty cool. They're like breaking out of their zone a little bit. I think that's something that we should aspire towards as well, to not get too comfortable and just always evolve, I guess. I don't know.
No,
I think that's fair. Because I love asking ecologists questions, like what they think of animals, because as like studying the arts, you only get some animals. You get wolves and bears and shit. When you hear like flying fish, I'm like, I've never considered that in my life. How beautiful it is that they escape what shapes them and they become something new. And like, because if you compare them to other fish, I think that's like not a desirable trait. But they found, I don't know, it makes them unique and it's proven to their advantage. So it's a really cool metaphor. Even like the fact that like there's an expression, it's like a fish out of water, but it's not a disadvantage in that case. It's an advantage. Really cool. I never even thought about flying fish until now. But I'm like, damn, that is a rich vein of metaphors. I don't know. And now I have one final question, and this is one that needs some preamble, but a lot of people don't reflect, they just consume. What do you think is inside someone's character and make them care about the environment? You mentioned a lot about being caretakers, about taking responsibility, about contributing to the hive being the greater collective that is humanity. So what do you think that trait is? Just a guess, what really spoke to you and really made you want to be responsible for your contributions on this earth?
Maybe I'm overly optimistic about this, but I'd like to think that it's in all of us. Like, I don't think it's a particular trait necessarily. I think every human is of this earth. We have reasons to love it. It's not in many generations or even many hundreds of years since we were, really, really drawing all of our livelihood directly from the earth, where there was, zero steps removed between our livelihood and the livelihood of our earth. So I think living in these cities, driving cars in climate-controlled environment almost all the time, we forget a little bit of that connection, but I think it's really just beneath the surface. And I don't think there's any particular trait that lends a person to caring about the environment more. I think you can approach it from so many different perspectives, but I think it requires some humility, curiosity. I think it also requires early life experiences, like having people in your life who can help you to teach you those things, to help you to see nature and to love nature, and instead of wanting to control it or maybe just sightsee in it necessarily, that you want to be a part of it and you want to be an active and positive part in it. So there are a few traits maybe that lend themselves to that, but I think it's also an education thing. And I don't think that there are any lost causes out there in the world. Like, I think we can all learn to love nature and learn to find our place in it, no matter who we are or what we're doing.
That was very beautiful. Thank you. You nailed it.
I'll add on that a little bit, because I agree with what Kaz said 100%, and the learned experiences, like when you're young, I think in my personal experience, it's kind of the culmination of that. So Kaz mentioned some traits. I'd add compassion to that, and also a sense of empowerment that you can make a difference. I think those fused together are kind of at the core of how I live my life, is caring about things and then thinking I can have an impact on it. And got that from my mom and from my grandpa, and those early life experiences for sure, like going fishing with my grandpa, who was kind of worshipped this like Hindu sect and believed in reincarnation, and made me look at that fish and think, oh, okay, this fish has its own experience of the world and what's my impact on it. And so I was exposed to that from an early age. So
It's brilliant. I do have, because Aristotle, he said that he believed that virtue was something that you try. You had to cultivate. He uses that language in particular. That's something you attempt, and upon attempting, you get better at. And with more time and more effort, the proper education, and the right terms, you could cultivate virtue. That's what he thought it was. Life was about said cultivation. But that being said, I'm going to join Cassie in sending you both off. Thank you for both coming here. This isn't my house, but I was happy to have been hosted with you guys. With that being said, though, we usually give our I was going to say opponents, our guests. Yeah, I played
Point opposite.
Yeah, I've been playing a lot of chess recently, so I've only been referring to people who sit across from me as opponents. So, would you like to do, I'm going to call it a plug for lack of a better term, but like to tell us anything that you're currently working on that you'd like either the public, whoever listens to this, would to know about, to say, hey, I like these dudes, I want to get in on this.
I'm gonna plug the Resilience Festival.
That's what I would have said too. So
Yeah.
that's perfect.
Happening April 28th. It's an event that's ran for 4 years, I believe, and it was originally set up by a group called the Local Good, and now it's being run by the Edmonton Permaculture Guild, and it is a festival where you share skills and connect with other people in the aim to create a more resilient community. So last year, and I mentioned this in the episode, I ran a worm composting workshop there, and I might do it again because a lot of people enjoyed it. But there's all sorts of skills you can learn, from mental resilience to fermentation and
Reconciliation, so many different things that are important for our community. So that's really an event that's focused on moving past sustainability into regeneration and resilience. So awesome, accessible event with just the best community possible. So yeah, it's like, yeah, that's the best thing to plug right now. It's like, you got to be there.
And is there any, it's free to show up? Is there any implicit charges with it?
It's free to show up. There are conversation cafes that happen that are free, and there will be some free events, but then many of the sessions will be run at cost. So
I see.
Those presenters might have some material fees or something like that, but it's really a core value of the organization to keep it very accessible, and essentially all of our knowledge keepers, our educators, are sharing what they know for free. So they're not walking away with any profit. It's really just like organizational overhead fees, basically. So fairly affordable, I'd say.
Well, thank you so much for coming over and sharing your knowledge and your company. And this was a great learning experience for both of us, I think. And yeah.
So that's vermicomposting. Absolutely everything that has ever had to do with vermicomposting.
Yeah, exactly. There's no reason to listen to any other media besides this podcast, really.
I think I did make a mistake. Everything concerning vermicomposting? That's crazy. We're missing 2 details. 1, Cassie, what did you learn from this experience?
I learned that keeping a vermicompost is, you do have to pay some attention to it. I've had it for a few weeks now, and I'm a little concerned. I don't know if the worms are still alive. I think they are.
No, I understand. Questioning whether something's alive after not seeing it for 2 weeks is a common question that my professors wonder. And then I show up 2 weeks later, and they're like, look at him.
There he is.
Not digested yet.
Anyway, it's going okay.
Absence makes the worms grow stronger, I've heard.
I just keep forgetting that I have it, and then like I don't know if I'm feeding them enough or like overfeeding them. I need to just, Martine, come over and help me figure this out.
Wow, if you were to come over, what would you two talk about?
Probably the upcoming Resilience Festival, which is happening on April 28th, and I'm volunteering, so you should definitely come. There's going to be workshops, conversation cafes, as Kaz mentioned earlier, and if you want to find out more, you can go to edmontonresiliencefestival.com, and you can sign up to volunteer with me, which would be really cool. Yeah.
With how close I am with Marcin now, I know he'd say, wow, Cassie, thanks for bringing up the Resilience Festival. You know what? You should check out our website. And by our, I mean both mine and Kaz's. What website would that be?
sprucepermaculture.ca.
Yeah, he would say that exactly like that.
I googled it right before this. So, what did you learn from this experience?
I learned how we're all part of a big whole. And I'm just going to end it like that.
No, that's great. It's beautiful.
I'm done.
What? That's not all you're gonna say.
Oh, that's... okay. I learned how... I really dig the philosophy of permaculture. I think it's actually beautiful. And out of all the different ideologies that I've heard about, I think it's one that might result in a really happy way of life, just from on a surface level and a deeper level. As our two guests have shown that they both follow it on a surface level, as it's their employment, but on a deeper level, as it's a very large contributing factor to who they are.
Yeah. So, thank you, Kaz and Martine, for enriching our lives and our soil. So thanks again, and we will see you next week when we talk all about sound editing.
I remind the viewer, the listener, that week is a relative term. Like, the only thing that we know for sure and can empirically measure that it's weak is me.